Hi, Denmo. So, yeah, you requested some clarification here as to the principle of charity and how it works. And if I get your concern correctly, basically, your concern is if you try to do this, if you try to attribute as much truth as you can to the person you're trying to interpret, um, do you run the risk of misinterpreting them? Do you run the risk of kind of twisting what they're saying around? So for example, if I take the Bible and try to interpret it as being as true as possible, would I, get some bizarro reading of the Bible, which would cause some problems down the line? Um, very good question. So let me see if I can answer this and speak to this a little bit. So, as a point of departure, let's compare this story of the talking snake in the Garden of Eden to another story of a talking animal. Let's compare it to Aesop's fable of the talking fox, right? So the story goes something like, there's a fox and he sees some grapes, and the fox really wants these grapes, and the fox is jumping up and down, just trying to get those grapes, and just can't get the grapes. And so finally, the fox says, "Well, those grapes were probably sour anyways," and stomps off in disgust. Okay, so how should we interpret this story about Aesop? Okay, we can do it two ways. We can either try to attribute as much truth to Aesop as possible, or we can try to attribute as much falsehood to Aesop as possible. Okay, so let's try attributing falsehood to Aesop first, right? So we'll say, okay, Aesop, it's completely wrong. Foxes do not talk. Therefore, this story never happened. Therefore, you're speaking complete nonsense. End of story, right? Okay, if you do that, okay, if you try to attribute as much falsehood to Aesop as possible, you completely drain the story of any of its meaning, right? I mean, in point of fact, the story about the talking fox does say some very true things and some very deep things about human nature, right? And how humans deal with loss and how humans deal with their thwarted expectations. And if your goals aren't met, how you mentally console yourself afterwards, right? Um, a much better way to interpret the story would be to say, okay, yeah, foxes don't talk. He must be talking metaphorically here. Let's see what other truths we can extract from this story. And if you try to do it like this, then the real meaning of the story, or at least a good meaning of the story, will come out and will be manifest here, right? So I think people who try to literalize the story of the talking snake in the Garden of Eden kind of are in the same position as the people who try to literalize Aesop fables here. Obviously, what we're talking about in the Garden of Eden here is it's a fable. We're not talking about something that literally happened like this, right? But like you said in your video, okay, this actually says a lot of true things about human nature and how humans respond and interact with their concept of the divine, right? You know, if you look around at nature and especially the kind of nature as it was the case when they were writing this story, where calamities were liable to happen at any moment. You can get a wacky disease out of nowhere. I mean, even today, you can get diagnosed with cancer out of nowhere, and just whacks you. One day the world is really good to you. The next day the world is really bad to you. Um, if you try to extrapolate from that, what kind of God would create this world that we're in? Um, I think you would come up with a God that's quite a bit like the God that's in Genesis here, right? So I think that far from twisting the meaning of the text, or um, far from distorting the meaning of the text, I think that if you try to attribute as much truth to the text as you can, um, you can get some good meanings from this text. So, at any rate, I hope that helps. I'll post a link to another one of my videos uh, called "The Principle of Charity," where this is completely ripped off from Donald Davidson, by the way, and Quine and others. So, which gives some more concrete situations under which you're trying to interpret somebody, and shows how the more truth or the more falsehood you interpret to somebody, how that changes and affects the interpretation process. So, good day, dude.